Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living.
What if you could map the unknown? What if that map allowed you to navigate this unknown so that you could successfully traverse it to reach your goals, whatever they might be? When you activate your capacity to tap into your inner guidance system, which is what I call it, and use it to create in the world, you are tapping into what my guest today calls first intelligence. She is revolutionary in her approach to teaching entrepreneurs how to successfully chart their course forward. So please stay tuned. I am very excited about today. And welcome to you to Wisdom Talk Radio. I am host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the quantum connection process. Go to the Baca Institute to discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the quantum connection quiz. We're each designed to connect directly with Source differently. And knowing your own style opens a deeper connection with the universe. And it's the secret to creating what you truly want in your life, because who you are is truly exactly what is needed. My guest today is Simone Wright. She is an internationally respected authority on intuition, evolutionary creativity, and entrepreneurship. It's quite a blend, isn't it? That's why I'm so excited. She started her first business at the age of 9 and has used her understanding of intuition, creativity, and entrepreneurial focus to build a globally respected coaching and education business, and to become an internationally collected artist who has become the highest selling artist of her kind in the world. Simone developed her intuition street cred by using her skills to successfully assist law enforcement in missing children's cases and in other criminal investigations. Her groundbreaking intuition training program and book, First Intelligence, have helped people from all walks of life develop profound intuitive clarity and vision to help them expand their businesses in ways that are in alignment with them, with the individual, and not with the world. Simone has also been featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, which in itself has a certain street cred. Welcome, Simone. I'm really excited that you are here as a guest on Wisdom Talk Radio.
Thank you for having me, Laurie. Thank you for having me. I mean, I've heard my bio before, but the way you opened it was so delicious. So thank you for that. Thank you for that graceful entree. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, and because, what I want to say, because there's so much of what I'm about and what I do that sort of parallels what you do in very different ways.
Sure.
It makes me even more excited to hear how you speak about all these kinds of things and how and what it is you're going to share with us today.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to open actually in a very, rather than a foundational sort of way, in a kind of a big leap into things.
Okay.
Because there's such a focus right now in the world around AI, both how to use it and all the tools and on and on and on. Almost every kind of program that I see has some aspect of that. And then there's all the, oh my God, what is AI going to do? And on about that.
Mm-hmm.
So you call this the intuition age. And I'd love for you to touch on how we access true wisdom, our true wisdom, in this age of information, so much information, and AI.
Mm-hmm. Well, the information age, data, a 24-minute news cycle, whereas it used to be a 24-hour news cycle. And before that, it was a 24-day news cycle. And, data is all around us. It's ubiquitous. Every corner has a different opinion. One opinion tells you to do this, and another opinion tells you to do the exact opposite. And there's all of this information. We're swimming it in the environment. But we are created by a divine wisdom that has the capacity to use the environment around it to evolve. And so when we are drowning in information, the divine wisdom of our being is going to activate what I call first intelligence,
Mhm.
which is what we know before we know anything. That's why I call it first intelligence.
Mhm.
Before we're taught, before we learn, before we're coached or conditioned in any way. First, this intuition is our first intelligence. But what the information age is doing is it's activating our intuition. At its basis, intuition is a survival
Mhm.
tool.
Mhm.
And at its most exalted, it's an evolutionary impulse. So the survival mechanism of intuition in this information age is activating our intuition to evolve us beyond so that we can transcend the information. I like to call the information a data tsunami. It's a big giant wave.
Mhm.
And our our intuition is the surfboard that we use to surf that wave. We can stay above it. In metaphysical scripture, it's walking on the water. It's
Mhm.
you're above the mind. And so our intuition helps us surf that wave so that we can, and if you've ever watched a really good surfer,
Mhm.
they can steer that surfboard anywhere they want it to go, even though they've got, a 50-foot wave of water behind them.
Mhm.
And so for us, our intuition is that surfboard, so that not only will we be able to survive in the information age, but we'll be able to thrive in it. So the information age is actually activating and elevating our intuition, because that's going to be the only way we survive.
Because it's activating it because it has to do with survival. And
Yes.
if we're going to survive what is currently here, because it is
Mm-hmm.
indeed here, then
Mm-hmm.
we need to use this in a different way than perhaps we have been trained.
Yes. Yeah. So the information age is actually an evolutionary impulse. Think of how, and if there are any, big zoological scientists listening on the call, I'm going to butcher this, but think of how a giraffe evolved
Mhm.
in its environment. There was a change in the environment. Where they got food before lower to the ground didn't exist anymore. Things were changing in the environment. So there had to be a radical evolution in one generation.
Mhm.
There had to be a radical evolution in order for that animal to survive. So what happened? They modified, they grew. Evolution supported them in surviving in that environment. So we're giraffing. We're
That's
giraffing right now.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So there's something else I want to ask in there. Um, and it's about what the way you just described that first intelligence as what we know, almost like beyond any training, beyond any education,
Mm-hmm.
what we came in with is
Mm-hmm.
what I hear you saying.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
accurate?
That's accurate. And it's not even what we came in with, because that field of intuitive information is completely spiritual. It's not rooted at all here in the 3D. So we're not coming in with it. When we're intuitively linked, we maintain our connection to it. It's and it's always there. It's always been there. It's never been born. It never dies. That field of infinite information. We we come in with the connection.
We come in with the connection. That's great. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
I knew that
yeah,
there was a subtlety in there that was really important. We
yeah,
come in with the connection
yeah.
because that's something that I have been really chewing on in the last while because I've been writing about it.
Mm-hmm,
That my experience was I grew up knowing all these things that I had no way really of knowing.
mm-hmm.
And it was very odd to be in the world in that way.
Yes, yeah. And every person, every child is born with that knowing.
Mhm.
It's cultivated out of us. It's
Mhm.
conditioned out of us. It's trained out of us. Sometimes it's, traumatized out of us.
Mhm.
And because it's so inherently natural, it's hard to quantify. How do you talk to an elite athlete? Let's say Simone Biles, another
Mhm.
Simone. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Like Simone Biles, this Olympic athlete, she's naturally skilled. She's naturally talented. She's had coaches to help her up level, but she can't tell you how or why she does what she does at that level. And because it's natural. What was important to me with the intuition for me, because it was natural,
Mhm.
um, and then how life was sort of setting me up, especially with working with law enforcement, was I was put in a position to have to quantify it. I was put in a position to have to reverse engineer it in a way that an environment like law enforcement would understand, would agree to,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't kick me out of the room because I was waving crystals. If anybody uses crystals, no offense, but law enforcement doesn't
Don't do that.
abide. That
Yeah.
you can't go into court on a hunch. You can't go into court, say my intuition led me here. You can't go into court with anything other than the facts. And so I needed to be able to reverse engineer the process so that it was rooted in the science. And so that was a gift for me because then I got to reverse engineer what was going on naturally.
Okay. Okay. So, but how? I mean, I don't mean how did you reverse engineer it? That I sort of understand. But why were you there in the first place? What took you there in the first place? Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, okay. So I've been intuitive, sensitive since I was a kid. A fellow that I knew growing up, and dated for a while in my late teens, and then ultimately we became lifeguards together. I was a lifeguard for many years. He and I worked together as lifeguards. He knew of my skill set as an intuitive. He always knew that and I didn't talk about it, but he knew, and I would say, I see things. After we grew up, and I started teaching intuition to the spiritual community, I was going through my hometown of Calgary up in Canada. And he knew I was in town, and he called and he said, listen, I'm going to ask a favor of you. I'm going to pick you up in about 15 minutes and I'm going to take you to a scene. Is that okay? And I said, sure. And he says, I'm not going to tell you anything. I said, that's fine. And so, but when I hung up the phone, I knew that three people were dead. It just, boom, it was there.
Yeah.
Three people are dead. So he picked me up. We drove to this little place in town and he said, I'll pick you up in 15 minutes. And he just booted me out of the car and said, go to, and it was a restaurant. So I went into the restaurant. I ordered some food to go because obviously I couldn't just stand there,
Mhm.
so I ordered some food to go. And the imagery of what had transpired there was a triple gang hit homicide. So um, there were three victims, three perpetrators. Two of the victims knew the shooters. The one was an innocent bystander. I saw all the imagery. I saw the weapons that were used. I saw how many shots were fired. I saw where the getaway car was parked. So the whole thing played like a movie in my head. And I got my to-go food. I came back. He came up and he said, well, and then I held up three fingers. I said, 3 and 3. And he said, yes, tell me more. And I just told him what I saw. And he's like, holy cow, you've got 95% accuracy. You've even got the holdback, which is stuff that only the cops and only the perpetrators would know. And he's like, and he just sort of sat there gobsmacked for a little while. And he said, would you want to do this for us full time? Which for a police officer, it's to ask is, and he was pretty high level. He'd been a detective for 25 years at this stage. So he was a high ranking officer. And I said, no, I don't want to do this for you full time. I said, but what if, and it spoke itself. I wasn't thinking about it,
Great.
but the words were, what if I could teach you guys how to do what I do? And I was like, who said that? I was like, oh, shoot. And he said, you can teach this? And I said, yeah, I can teach anybody to do this. That's why I'm up in Canada right now. I'm teaching this intuition class. And I said, but I'd need to teach it a different way to you guys. And he said, well, put a proposal together. I'll run it through the ranks and let's see what we can do. And the long story short was I got approval. I was vetted by the psych department. I had a conversation with the top psychologist to validate that I wasn't batshit crazy. And then they said, okay, go ahead. So go do what you do and then come back to us. So it took the 9 months. And I had to sit down and say, okay, how do I quantify this in a way that a very pragmatic, materially based structure, law enforcement, is going to accept? And so I had to know that the process needed to be rooted in science, because that's the only language that the material world law enforcement will listen to.
Right.
But I also had to add the spirit to it, because you can't have one without the other. So it became first intelligence using the science and spirit of intuition and merging those two things together. So it took me 9 months to develop the program. And then I went up there and I had 22 police detectives in a room for 3.5 days. And the first question I asked them was, how many of you guys and gals have been out on a scene and you just know in your gut that something's not right, something's not true, something's out of whack. You just know what you know, but you don't know why you know it. And every hand in the room went up. And I said, okay, so I'm not here to try to convince you of anything,
Oof.
because you've already had the experience.
Right.
You already know that the mechanism is there. What I'm here to do is help you understand it, help you know what's going on, help you direct it, and then help you trust it. And they're like, okay, we can get on board with that.
Oof.
So, and
That was
listen,
pretty brilliant, Simone. Can I just say for a second, that was pretty brilliant. The way
thank you.
that you framed it, the way that you were with them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't want to pick a fight. I wasn't there to
Oh.
try to prove anything. And I had one guy, like I said, I had 22 cops for 3.5 days, over 500 years of street experience in that room. And everybody was curious. Some people were really enthused, and then there was one holdout, and he sat in the front row with his arms crossed the whole time. He didn't take any notes. He didn't do any of the exercises. He just was trying to will me out of the room.
Hmm.
I was like, you're just empowering me there with all of your cynicism. So it was a really steep learning curve for me. But the end result was they came out of that room after those 3 days and you could see the light bulbs going on. They're like, that's what that is. That's what that is. And then how I and so I did missing kids stuff, and I worked on some cold cases and with some really good success. And then one day I got a call from a police department and they said, Simone, we've found a leg.
Mm.
Can you help us find the rest of the body? And that's when I was like, I can't do this with you guys anymore. I, I like puppies and kitties and horses and painting, and I can't do this for you anymore. So I said, I bless you. I said, there's other intuitive bloodhounds out there who like this kind of stuff. Feel free to go find them, but I'm not your gal.
Yeah.
And so then I took what I had developed for law enforcement and I tweaked it so that it could be more
Uh,
used by more people. And so then that's when I took it into entrepreneurship.
it's a natural.
Mhm.
I mean, I used to talk about what I do in relationship to innovation in particular. And then as
Mhm.
I said, well, I guess I've got to know more about what the people who are out there saying, oh yeah, this is what innovation is, what they're saying and how they're writing about it. And I found that all I could do was go to sleep as
Mm,
because
mm,
it wasn't rooted in what I was experiencing and knowing as the heart of what intuition of innovation really is.
mhm,
And I'm
mhm,
hearing what you're talking about bringing, and because you talk about using intuition, innovation, and imagination to
mhm,
to shape your success.
mhm. Yeah.
So that's a very different thing.
It is. It is. And so, like I
That's
say, at the basis, intuition will serve survival,
right.
but at its height, it's this evolutionary intelligence. And then it's got all of these frameworks in between. So
Ah,
there's lots of different levels between survival and thrival, and innovation, especially now. This is why I jokingly say to my entrepreneurs, we want to be able to use our intuition to help us set new trends instead of follow the old ones. You
mhm.
want to set trends, not follow them. And in order to set a trend, you have to innovate.
Yes.
And innovation, alters paradigms. Innovation happens not only in business, but in athletics. It happens in our ability to go to the moon, breaking the sound barrier. That's an innovation. Breaking the 4-minute mile. That's an innovation. Being able to use your intuition to find a solution that data can't back up. That's innovation.
Okay, stop there for a second because I totally agree with you. And I love that you're saying that because I feel like there is a leap that needs to happen in the way that we even talk about this.
Mhm.
And you've been languaging that, I suspect, for quite some time now.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we've had one conversation before this, so
Yeah.
I'm coming to appreciate that even more because
Yeah.
there's so much that feels very thin about
Mhm.
intuition, which is why I don't even use that word. I talk about it in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, I can get behind it when you're talking about it, and when you're talking about that evolutionary impulse that it is really in the service of creation.
Absolutely. 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 And you'd asked earlier about this question of AI. And AI is a binary yes no system that could only produce content based on the data that it's already been provided with. So it's given data, let's say it's given 1,000 data blocks, and then you command it what to do. So there's more data. And what AI does then is it moves all those little blocks around
Uh-huh.
and it gives you new data. But it can only provide you with what it's been provided with in a rearranged way.
And which is great because it creates new connections and you get to
Yeah,
see things in a different way.
yeah. But
But
it's
you're talking
limited.
about tapping really into that quantum field.
Yeah, yeah. And so we could call that quantum field, Laurie, we could call it the muse.
Okay.
You hear people talking about the muse,
Hmm.
MUSE.
Right.
AI doesn't have the muse.
Right.
It doesn't have the spiritual connection. It doesn't have the quantum connection. It can put pieces of the puzzle together in a quantum way, but it doesn't have the universal muse intelligence to help it
Mhm.
innovate.
Right.
So what I discovered in my reverse engineering of the intuitive process is that it has 4 levels. The cops understood the basic level,
Yes.
gut instinct, right? And this is where the biology of the body comes into effect. So the gut, there's a brain in the belly. Science has validated it. There's a neural network in the gut. But that intuition is binary. It's yes, no, safe, unsafe, life affirming, life negating. Don't go down that alley. Do take that job. Yes, no, right? It's binary.
Yes. Yes.
Simple, basic survival, period. The cops were familiar with that. And most people on the planet are gut,
Right.
especially men, gut. Then it moves up in the biology to the heart.
Uh-huh.
And the heart intuition is rooted in connection, communication,
Uh-huh.
compassion. When you're intuiting from your heart, you know what to say. You know what needs to be communicated. You know what needs to be connected. You know how to speak to somebody. You're having a heart to heart conversation with somebody. That's that intuitive level where it's that resonant, coherent heart field where that's the heart intelligence. Then it moves up to the brain. So there's a third level of intuitive biology where it's rooted in vision. It's rooted in targeting. We can talk about that in a minute if you'd
Okay.
like. It's rooted in innovative ideas. Steve Jobs was a visionary. He was a visioneer. The
Right.
intuition in his vision was really powerful. He didn't really have the heart intuition going because he was a bit of a pill,
Yeah.
but he was really strong up here. So the visionary intuition is the third level. And then there's the fourth level, the completely spiritual aspect, universal intelligence, the muse, the quantum level of intuition, which is completely non-physical. No data, all data, no time, no space. AI doesn't have access to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't innovate because it can't pull information from data that has not already been run through the system.
Yeah. So it's still, it can't pull from the unknown.
That's right. Exactly. And we are wired. We're swimming in the unknown. We have access to the information that, Michelangelo had and Leonardo da Vinci had, and we have access to the information that we can't even comprehend yet.
Yeah.
So that's where that innovation exists, is at that more quantum level, as you call it, that
But then
AI doesn't reach.
how do, oof, there's something about tapping into that, I think you're calling that the fourth dimension there?
The fourth level
The
of
fourth level,
intuition.
okay. And then bringing that down through the other levels. In other words, running it through those other systems. 'Cause it's not like we only have one. We
Nope.
may only have developed one. We may
Correct.
only be tapping into that, but
Yeah. The idea that I like to say is we make ourselves transparent to that level of information where our thinking mind gets very specific and then we shut it off. So when I'm looking for a missing kid, my target is the kid is home. The kid is home. That's the target. The kid is home. I can't be in my mind, gosh, where's the kid? I got to find the kid. I got to find the kid, because that's then what my antenna is looking into the field for. And so I'm not going to be able to find the kid. So the target is always the kid is home, or this case is closed, or, it's always the end result, right? And this is also another thing, I invite you guys to write this down. When you know the truth, facts don't matter. When you know the truth, facts don't matter. So let's take this into the idea of finding a missing kid.
okay.
The facts are, the cops call me and says, Bobby's missing. He's been missing for 3 days. Nobody has a cell phone. Nobody knows where he is. The facts are the kid is gone. The kid is missing. Nobody knows where he is. The facts are. But when you know the truth, which is nothing is lost ever in that quantum field. Nothing. If it were, then the field couldn't exist if something was suddenly separate from it. So nothing is ever lost in that quantum mind, in that universal mind, in that divine mind. And I am an aspect of that divine mind. So that would mean that nothing is lost to me either.
Right.
So the kid is home is the target. Nothing is lost. I and that field are one. And then Simone shuts up and becomes transparent. Meaning I'm not judging the situation. I'm not questioning the situation. I'm getting myself into an ordered, harmonic, coherent wave function, which is again another biological function. And then you're transparent, and then the information just flows. I'm not going looking for the information because it's all here. I'm just making myself transparent, available to it, so that then it starts to move.
You and I were talking before we started the interview today about surrender. And to me, that's an aspect of surrender, of surrendering.
Absolutely.
To being transparent to is surrendering.
Yes.
Giving up any kind of judgment, or it has to go this way, or even expectation.
Any kind of attachment. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I go and I step into a situation like that, whether it's with the police or whether it's with my entrepreneurial clients, I really want to do well by them.
Sure.
But but I have to be able to let go. And when I'm working with entrepreneurs, I'm not doing the intuiting for them. I'm teaching them how to do the intuiting for themselves,
Of course.
right? So it's a little less pressure.
No, no,
Thanks.
that's what I so appreciate about you. You're not working in what I think of as the kind of psychic dimension.
Mm-mm. No,
You're
no,
really there as an educator, as an opener, as an activator.
for sure. Yeah. And I did the psychic stuff at first when I sort of first stepped out into the world. And I kind of felt like I was cheating people because, I would get, because I thought, I don't want to be your tool.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't like give a man a fish or teach a man a fish.
Hmm.
And so I kind of did that for a little while. A good fit for me. It's like, ick, I don't like this. Again, like what I did with the cops. What if I could
Hmm.
teach you how to do what I do?
Yeah.
And that was way more resonant for me. But to speak to the idea of surrender, to trust that that universal wisdom, and you can call it whatever you want. You can call it God, you can call it source, you can call it the quantum, you can call it, and I always jokingly say, if you guys have heard me on an interview before, I've said, call it Frank if you want to. It doesn't care.
Right.
It doesn't have a name. We as human beings name it so that we know how to target it, right? But
Mhm.
God doesn't have a name. We've just named it that. Source
Right.
doesn't have a name. We've just
Right.
called it that. So it's that ability to be, when you know the truth, the facts don't matter. And so if you know the truth, I am a divine spark of the infinite wisdom of the universe. I am that infinite wisdom, which would then mean I have access to any information that I want or need in any dimension of time or space.
Yeah.
That includes where the kid is.
Uh-huh.
And so then if I make myself transparent and I surrender, and then for me, my intuitive superpower is visual. So it starts to play as a movie in my head, right? And so I'll see pictures. And um, and then without editing, I just tell the cops or whoever I'm working with what I see. I don't judge it, I don't edit it because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Hmm.
And then I give that information to the police and they go do their job. And then I go play with my dog.
And it's, it's the same whether it's a lost kid or your lost keys or what's my next step? How
Yes.
is this needing to unfold?
Yes, yeah. And so when I'm working with clients, and I like to call my clients athletes. I was an elite athlete growing up. I was a competitive swimmer for about 10 years growing up. And there does need to be a fitness. You do need to develop a fitness to be able to do this. There is a tenacity and an endurance and a training and an understanding of principle that
Yes.
needs to be applied in order to
Yes.
do this. So when I'm working with my athletes, my metaphysical athletes, I say to them, okay, if I was training you as a regular athlete, as a physical one, and you wanted to go to the Olympics, that's your target. I'm going to the Olympics. So okay. So the things that you're going to need to do to get to the Olympics are going to be different than the things you're going to need to do if you're running a 5K over the weekend.
Right.
End of sentence. So the thing of it with the entrepreneurs is I have them set really strong targets. And the targets for an entrepreneur instead of a singular target like I do with the kid is home, I have them set up a triad, which sets up a harmonic, like three notes of music, boom,
Uh-huh.
has more resonance than just one. So I have them set up a triad target, and that triad is rooted in time, ideas, and money. Time, ideas, and money. And so we build a framework built on that triad, and that becomes their initial target,
Ah. Give me an
right?
example of what that would look like.
So I can give you, so one of the clients that I worked with recently, when he came to me, his business was doing $40 million a year, which is a very nice nut. Nothing wrong with 40 mil a year. But his idea, his Olympics was, I want to build $1 billion company. I'm
Okay.
like, okay, that. And I said, okay, cool beans. Uh, what's your timeline? And he goes, I don't know, 10 years, because $1 billion is a lot, but so let's
Okay.
give it 10 years. I said, okay. And what's the idea? And he says, well, I have an education company. I said, okay. So $1 billion. So there's your money, $1 billion. His idea is his education company, and he's giving himself 10 years. So over the course, when we started working together, he was doing 40 million, and we worked for 3 years together, and he'd gotten it from 40 million to 200 million in 3 years using these principles of
Okay.
time, ideas, and money.
Uh-huh.
And then we booted him out into the world. I said, now go. I'll train you how to swim the race, but I'm not going to swim it for you. You
Yes.
go. And I said, and when you need me, come back, we'll fine tune. Need me, come back, we'll fine tune. So we worked together for 3 years, and we 5 times his ROI. I don't know all those technical names,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but we took him from 40 to 200 in 3 years. And so that's based on a really strong intuition triad. And when you start following that target, then what's going to start to happen is your head, your heart, your gut. So that's another triad that you add over top of it. Those are all going to start to resonate and guide you and show you where you're going to need to go. And that's how it sort of starts. But if without that target, because people will often say it, especially in the spiritual community, they'll say, I'm going to let the universe decide. I'm like, no,
It doesn't allow
because,
itself to root.
and because you are the universe.
Right.
So if you're the universe, then you have to decide. And you remember that the universe is infinite in its potential. And if you don't make a choice, I like to use the analogy of a cowboy in a herd of 10,000 cows, and his boss says, I want you to pick a cow and bring one home. That cowboy has to pick a cow. Those cows aren't just going to walk up to him and go, hey,
Yep.
take me home. He's got to choose one and throw his lasso into the herd and rope it and bring it in.
Yeah.
And that's the power of our conscious choosing mind. The power to choose, the power to target, the power to say, out of infinite potential, this is what I choose. And because you are the universe, you can choose whatever it is that you want. And so that's the power of setting potent targets
Mm-hmm.
and then allowing the rest of the system to operate.
So it's like you are, I think, I want to say it. It's like you are tapping into that whole field, that field of unlimited potential.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to tap into it, you've got to have a channel
Yeah.
for which or through which that can come into the physical world, that
Mm-hmm.
can be created. Is
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
fit?
Yeah. 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 And then it becomes a partnership between you and your higher self, or you and the universal self, or you and your divine self, where then you as the conscious chooser uh, are partnering with the unlimited creator.
Mm-hmm.
and you're it's like that image of on the Sistine Chapel where the
Right.
finger of man is touching the finger of God. Look, where that happens, that thing in the middle is where that transformation happens.
Yeah. So, what are the kinds of things that you see where people interrupt that process?
How long do you got?
Right, I know.
The list is long and mighty. Um, well, first of all, part of it is a misunderstanding of the process, and I think that's why I'm here, is to help demystify the process. Um, people think it's metaphysical or paranormal or voodoo or woo or a bunch of fluff, which of course it's not. And then when we understand the relationship, it's interesting that you bring up this question, because I had a coaching call with a client the other day, and she was working on a scenario in her world that she wanted some really potent clarity on. So I walked her through it. She got her answer, and I said, okay, she got her intuitive nudge. And
Uh-huh.
then I said, okay, so that's the answer from the field. You've got
Right.
your intuitive nudge. Now you have to use your conscious mind, your choosing mind, to hear that information and say yes to it.
Okay.
You have to say, I've heard you and I say yes to you. And that tends to be the missing piece, because people will hear that information intuitively and they'll be like, yeah, but what if that's not right? What if it's not wrong? What if it's not accurate? What if? And I said, nah,
Right.
you have to be able to hear that information and then choose that it's correct. You have to choose that it's correct. Like when I'm getting my information for a missing kid, I have to choose that it's right. And I say, this is right. And this is what I'm giving to the cops. And that's what you take.
Yes.
But if you do not acknowledge the moment that it hits you and you say yes, and it's almost like what would be the word? You're grounding it. When you say yes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're grounding it in the physical. You're locking it in.
And you're even doing that energetically. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's an absolute vibrational happening taking
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. And that tends to be the piece that a lot of people are missing, because this again is the idea that the misconception or misperception that intuition is somehow separate from us and it's this magical thing that we just can't trust, and that's just not accurate.
Yeah.
So when you understand how these things work, when you understand the levels of not only of intuition, but you understand the levels of mind,
Mm-hmm.
conscious mind, subconscious mind, superconscious mind, that at the level of superconscious mind and subconscious mind, every bit of information you could ever want or need exists at those two levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're consciously choosing or consciously saying yes, we're agreeing with the potential
Yes.
and it locks it in.
We're
But people,
receiving that potential even.
yes.
So there's another piece in there which is about action.
Hmm.
Right? Because you can lock it in, but unless there's some kind of action that follows that, it feels like it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like when I give the information to the police, you know, they're my partners in this situation.
Mhm.
So they're the ones who go and take the action, because ultimately they're the ones who have to go to court and they're the ones who have to. So, but for us as visioneers, you know, there's an implementation that has to happen, right?
Right.
Right. You have to be able to implement. And, but there's also a balance between implementation and surrender,
Yes,
right?
indeed.
There's a, there is a fine line. And
It's a
so
dance, I think.
absolutely. Absolutely. So implementation is important, and but then there's the spiritual aspect. So we want to be mindful. So there's all of these different levels, right? There's the material level,
Hmm.
skin suit. There's the mental level, mind, and then there's the spiritual level, complete invisible potential. Most people are working with the material level as the priority, material, then mental, then spiritual.
Hmm.
But when we're working in this level, we have to flip it
Yes.
so that the spiritual level is the priority, then the mental, and then the physical. So I always like to say, if you've got the spiritual part going, you're going to start to get mental ideas, and then that's going to give you impulses in the physical.
Right.
But I often will not take an action until I've sat still enough to be transparent, to have the impulse to move.
Which is another part of that whole equation.
Mhm, mhm. A
I mean,
lot
don't
of
just
us,
do it, just don't just do it because, oh yeah, I got the guidance to do this kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. There's a, when we're flipping, and I don't know if you in your years of training have heard, a lot of people talk about there's going to be a pole shift on the planet.
Mhm.
Have you heard this?
Mhm. Yes.
Well, the pole shift that we're talking about is the pole shift that I just mentioned.
Hmm.
It's moving from the polarity where the material world is the priority and spirit world is down here, and we're flipping that on its head. So the spiritual world is the priority and the material world
Hmm.
is not. So that's the pole shift. It, it, there would be it would be a bit of a catastrophe if the earth poles actually shift. So
No, but that makes sense. Thank you for that.
yeah, so it's an internal pole shift that has to happen. And So then the spiritual awareness, the energetic awareness, the quantum awareness, and your relationship with that becomes the priority. And that spiritual awareness also is the one with the power that then inspires your action.
Yes.
It's an
I do a
inspired
program
action.
called Inspiration into Action, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about tapping into that inspiration level before you take your action.
Yes. Yeah.
And all your actions need to be informed by that inspiration dimension.
Yeah. And what people are tending to notice, what I notice in my community, is that the way we used to take action doesn't work anymore.
Mm.
They're like, I don't know what's happening. You know, the way I used to run my business and I had great success at this level doing this and doing this, and it's not working anymore.
Hmm. Hmm.
What am I doing wrong? I'm like, nothing, nothing. But what you have to be able to do is to really start to tap into that spiritual level and and resist the temptation. And it was a really important habit that I had to try to break, because I've been an entrepreneur since I was 9. So I'm a serial doer. I do, I do, I do, I do, I do. I'm busy, I create, I'm busy, I create, I'm busy, I create, I do. And the doing now, when you're mapping at this higher level, doesn't work anymore. And so it's like, oh, something big is coming. Think of it like this: the way the caterpillar used to feed itself, when it's becoming the butterfly, doesn't work anymore. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
come on.
Everything I learned, everything I thought I knew, I have to
Mhm.
release.
Yes. Yeah. And
And
so
that's that
everything,
evolutionary quantum leap. It's not
yeah,
just an evolutionary like step. It really
no,
is a quantum leap. And that's what
it
I'm
is.
experiencing life as being these days.
Oh, yes. And so at that level, I like to think the butterfly really, or the caterpillar, has to really trust. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm getting an impulse to stop eating. All right, I'm going to stop. I'm getting an impulse to build a little house around me. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm getting an impulse to stop moving. Okay, I'm going to do that. Something bigger is emerging. Can I trust that? And that's where the intuition comes in. The intuition will say, you're safe.
Yeah.
You're safe. It's okay. Rest, trust, rest, trust. But shouldn't I be doing? Shouldn't I be doing? Rest, trust, right? And then that intuition part comes in, or sorry, the intellectual part comes in and says, well, that makes absolutely no sense.
How can I be successful if I'm not in action?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or that I'm not manic. You, so we can, so let's look at another triad. So I've given you time, ideas, money.
Hmm.
I've given you head, heart, gut. So let's give you another one as an accuracy triad. This is your accuracy. How do I know if it's accurate? And it's built on three things too. The first one is elegance. Intuition is very elegant. No extra bells and whistles. It's just boom. Simple, clear, complete. It's efficient. Efficient. It doesn't burn energy. It doesn't cost energy. It doesn't tell you to spin your wheels. It's just do this, then do this. And it's expansive. It's going to invite you to grow. It's going to invite you to innovate. It's going to invite you to let go of what no longer has value and no longer works at the limited level. And it's going to say, hey, kid, this is going to scare the crap out of you. But, but trust us, trust me, trust the higher self, trust us. And that's, so the elegance part and the efficiency part are easy because they're, the expansion part is where people lose their marbles.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're like, well, this should be, this should be easy. This should be.
But it takes opening your hands, which
Mhm.
means whatever you've got in those hands might disappear.
Yeah,
And
not going to work
but
anymore.
I want to hold on to it because I know that I know this. I don't know
Yes.
that.
No, no. And there you go, right there. That's the key to innovation. I know this. Well, you can't innovate when you're holding on to what is known.
Right.
And so that's where that idea of surrender comes in. It's like, okay, I'm gonna trust this. And for a while you may feel like you're in free fall, but that's when you're saying to yourself, yes, I've heard the direction. Yes, I know I've set the strong target. It doesn't make sense to me yet, but I
I
have
can't
to,
see all the steps. But
yeah,
you don't.
no, no, you just have to. This is why I say intuition, living an intuitive life is not for sissies, because you have to be able to really step out in that faith
Yes. Yes.
that, you know, the people who are based in data
Hmm.
don't don't do.
Yeah.
They're looking at the data and they're going, okay, well, if I follow this trajectory, the data says that this should turn out. You go, okay, well, then you'll get a trajectory, but it's going to be based on the data.
Yeah.
And data, if it is evolving, moves
Hmm.
exponentially like this. Quantum intuitive stuff,
Yeah.
right? Or
Hmm.
completely nonlinear, moving in multiple directions at once. It's not a straight line. You can't be a chicken and do this work.
No, no. I've said before, it's not for the faint of heart.
Not at all. Mm-mm.
And yet, this is where the moreness lies. This is where the capacity to live the kind of life that we want to live, to
Yeah.
and to take care of the problems, the so-called problems that we're seeing in the world. This is where it lies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, working with AI and working with existing data will will help for sure. I'm not suggesting that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, but where we are right now needs some quantum evolutionary,
It does.
you know,
It does.
it needs some pretty big leaps, and that is going to come from the intuitive mind,
Mhm.
not from the logical one or the rational data-based one. And so that's why I'm so excited about what's going on right now, because again, the information age is activating this intuitive mind.
That's the piece that I'm glad you circled back around to that, because that's where we started. And that's mind-blowing, actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So people look at the information age and the emergence of AI as a problem. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a evolutionary impulse. Holy moly. If if we understand, right, that behind every scenario that appears limiting or catastrophic, if we understand that behind every scenario like that, there's an evolutionary impulse and we know where to look, then you go, oh man, give me my intuition surfboard and let me surf this wave. Where do I want to go?
Are you writing about that at all?
Excuse
And
me.
if you're not, would you?
It's in my book, First Intelligence, Using the Science
Okay,
and
so
Spirit of
this
Intuition.
piece is also
Mhm.
okay.
It's the triads that I talked about here are in the First Intelligence Entrepreneurs Edition.
Okay.
Those triads are in there. But the surfing the wave is in the First Intelligence idea, is that,
But particularly this around the information age.
oh, no. And okay, I will.
I feel like there's another piece that you're needing to put out, because
Okay.
oh God, it feels huge. It feels essential. And please, would you?
I will. And one of my targets is to get back on Oprah. And so that is, and this conversation about information age AI is going to be able
Yep.
to take to her. So
Yes.
that would certainly be a great conversation starter. So the idea, when a limit emerges or appears to emerge
Hmm.
is we go, okay, and whether it's in a collective, globally, or personally, we go, okay, something truer, something greater, something grander is wanting to emerge. And if I can let go of the impulse to try to hold on to what is dying, i.e. caterpillar, and can trust the intuitive process that everything that's coming apart is in service to what is truer, you can still be afraid. You can still be scared.
Sure.
That's fine. But if you understand that even while you're afraid, there's this deeper wisdom that's kind of pushing you, going, hey, kid, it's okay. You don't need to be a caterpillar. So, what I like to say is you can use your intuition and still be scared.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
People tend to think that they need to be vibrating high and only confident and only in love all the time. It's like, no, that power is there whether you make your bed in heaven or you make your bed in hell. It's there for you, right? That intelligence is there for you. So even if you're freaked out, you can say, I know my intuition is here. I know that divine wisdom is here. I'm scared out of my mind. But you can say to your intuition, show me the clear path today,
Yes. Yes.
or just show me the clear path now. And I'll still be scared, but I'll trust the information and I'll say yes to it.
Yeah.
And then eventually you start to feel more comfortable. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't burst into flames today. Okay. How about that?
Novel
Maybe,
thing.
novel thing. Maybe I can do it again tomorrow, knowing that I'm not going to burst into flames. And then eventually you find your way. You find your way to some other quantum level. And you're like, I have no idea how I got here.
Hmm. Wow. Simone, it's a great place to end, and it's a great place for me to want to continue on with you for the next few hours. However,
I would be delighted to come back, Laurie.
I would just so welcome that. I would so welcome that.
Yeah, thank
Would you
you.
let people know how best to find you and say talk about First Intelligence again, where people can find that?
Sure. Yeah, you can find all of my stuff at SimoneWright.com, SIMONEWRIGHT.com. My First Intelligence programs, I have two of them.
Mhm.
One is the basic fundamentals that talks about, head, heart, gut, how to tap in, the biology of everything. And then there's the First Intelligence Entrepreneur Edition, and that one specifically talks about entrepreneurial targeting, accuracy, and things like that. So there's two ways you can get your taste of First Intelligence. The book is available on Amazon, and I'm open to one-on-one coaching um, with anybody who wants it or wants to be able to refine this. And listen, I sometimes have people come who just want to develop their intuition at this level.
Right.
And then I have these entrepreneurs who are like, I have $1 billion goal. Okay. And so if you're anywhere in between in those things, that's what I help people do with the one-on-one stuff. Um, and then there's my YouTube channel, Modern Mystics with Simone Wright on YouTube. Um, I think I'm going to get a little bigger on social media, but it hasn't been my wheelhouse. So the website is really the best way to
Okay.
connect with me.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you so much for, well, I guess I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for what you've given to me. There's a level of connection and inspiration, and
Mm.
I'm loving the different connections that are happening in me as we've been conversing.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's just like what happened with the police officers when I said to them, how many of you have been on the street and you just know what you know, and all of their hands went up. And it's the same for when I talk to people like you who have been working at these really high evolved levels your whole life, and it's just been sort of natural to you, and you've quantified it in your own way. But then to have this other sort of level of, oh, what I notice that when I work with people who perform at high levels like you do, and I'm able to share these kind of concepts with them, it becomes even more expanded in
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. All right. So you're already an Olympic athlete. If I use my Olympic athlete
Mm.
analogy, you're already at an Olympic level. And now you've come to play with me for a little while, and I've given you some little Olympic level tools. And now you're going to go and break another record at an Olympic
Mhm.
level. And so that for me is such fun.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I help people whose natural inherent tools is there? And if they're really active, great. How do we refine it so you become a Simone Biles at your level?
Exactly.
And if you're just getting started, how do we get it so that those tools are working in a way that you don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
That's what's fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Took
feel
me
it.
in.
I feel your fun.
Yeah,
So thank
thanks.
you for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio.
You're welcome. My great pleasure. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you to our listeners and viewers for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. And please join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. Know that you can find us on your favorite place to listen to podcasts, also on YouTube, because we're there too. And if you've enjoyed listening today, please do leave us a review, because when you do, that not only tells us, hey, yeah, you're doing something right, but it helps other people to discover more of what is available here. And that's what we're about, is about transforming the world and opening new doors. So for more for you about how to thrive with your own personal quantum connection, take the Quantum Connection quiz today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.